We've got some dolls.
Well, I don't have any dolls because they kind of creep me out, especially after doing a list like this. But you will see that there are some on eBay on here, so
check them
keep your eyes out.
If you have some pocket change to spend and want to be cursed.
The Twilight franchise is full of awkward performances and poorly written dialogue, but the scariest thing to come out of it may be a doll that was used on set. In Breaking Dawn Part 2, Bella and Edward's daughter, Renesmee, was a doll. She wasn't supposed to be a doll in the story, they just decided it would be easiest to use a doll on set instead of a real human being, which I mean, sure, but easier doesn't always make something better. And in the case of this movie, the prop was downright nightmarish. If I had a daughter that came out looking like that, it wouldn't be good. Anyway, apparently this prop doll doesn't just look creepy, it is creepy. By that I mean the cast said they thought the thing was downright haunted and hated being around it. So much so that it was nicknamed Chucky-Smee. It now sits in the Forever Twilight collection in Forks, Washington, which displays a whole bunch of props and wardrobe from the movies. Staff will say they see the doll moving around on her own, often being found in different positions in the glass case. Staff will see her standing up straight one day, only to come in the next day with her sitting or in some weird position.
Next on our list today we have the doll in a painting, the intersection where creepy artwork and cursed dolls meet. In 1972, with a rapidly approaching deadline, artist William Stoneham decided to use a poem that his wife had written him as the inspiration for his next painting, this painting, which he called The Hands Resist Him. It was a physical reminder of William's upbringing and his time spent with his adoptive parents. What he saw as beautiful seriously creeped out the public. The young man in the painting, representative of William, stands next to a dead-eyed doll, holding something that appears to have frayed wires coming out of the top. And in the windows behind the two, hands can be seen reaching out towards them, pressed against the glass. The painting was eventually sold to John Marley at an event attended by Henry Seldes and William Stoneham himself. All three men died shortly after. In 2000, the painting became popular once more when its owners listed it for sale on eBay, claiming that their daughter had seen the man and doll in the painting fight, and that at one point the family had even witnessed the man go missing from the painting after he climbed right off the canvas in the middle of the night. The family selling the painting was also looking for someone to bless their home after the piece was gone. I don't blame them, it's really creepy to look at.
In a museum in the town of Quesnel, British Columbia, there's a doll named Mandy that likes to follow people with her eyes, and these are not the kind of eyes you want to have following you around a room. Just take a look at this monstrosity. Yeah, keep it the hell away from me, please. Even without all the stories about it, I'd still be creeped out having this thing around. Mandy was gifted to the Quesnel Museum and Archives in 1991. The doll is now about a century old, and the donor had received it from her grandmother. It had been locked in a trunk for years, but when she took it out, she felt that something was just off about the doll. Wonder why. She decided to donate it to the museum. When Mandy arrived, the staff photographed her to add her to the collection and left her in the lab overnight. The next morning, they found the lab in complete disarray, as if someone had thrown a big temper tantrum. Another strange event occurred later when a stuffed lamb given to Mandy to keep her company was found outside of her locked case. Visitors also report odd experiences. One person from Calgary tried to videotape Mandy but couldn't get the camera to work, though it worked fine everywhere else in the museum. Another visitor from Surrey returned home to find her house had been broken into, with only one item missing, being a porcelain doll. A local reporter was developing photos of Mandy in the basement lab, heard footsteps upstairs, and then his contact sheet jammed in the machine, something that had never happened to him before. And of course, a lot of museum visitors will swear that Mandy's eyes follow them as they move around.
Next up, we've got Harold, who was purchased by a young man attending a flea market in 2003. As soon as he spotted the doll, the young man knew he had to have it. He went back and forth with the old man selling it, but eventually the two settled on $20 for the dilapidated Harold. The young man began to walk away with his purchase, but the old man chased after him, insisting that the young man know the origins of the doll that was now in his possession. The old man told of how the doll, Harold, had been given to his own son as a gift, but that his son died shortly after. After his son's death, the old man kept Harold in his room, but whenever he walked by, he would hear the sounds of singing and laughter, even though there was no one there. Eventually, the old man became sick of the taunting and he tried to burn the doll, but Harold wasn't having it. He wouldn't burn. Despite the old man's warnings, the young man took the doll home. That night, he began having severe migraines, something he had never experienced in the past. And then, 2 days later, his cat died. After that, he began hearing voices and laughter, just as the old man claimed to have heard himself. Despite what the young man was experiencing, he couldn't give up that connection with Harold, and he decided to keep the doll, but he locked him away in a suitcase for safe measure, where he remains to this day, just waiting for the moment someone lets him out.
Next up, we have what is described as a possessed demon doll currently up for auction on eBay. And at the time of this video coming out, you only have till tomorrow to place your bids, so get on there and get your dollars in. The seller described how the doll, whose name is Valerie, has scratched her and her husband on more than one occasion. She says in the item description that she keeps her away and hidden in the water heater closet, and that if the doll is left out or if she dares to look into its eyes, there are consequences. Saying if you just glance at her vessel, some type of mark will show up on your body. The seller also notes that the doll will be bound and blindfolded when shipped out, which is for the seller's protection during packaging and for your protection as you open the package. So it sounds like an easy sell to me. Ditch the tickle me Elmo that you have to tickle and snag this possessed demon doll that will scratch you instead.
Next up, we have the Victorian Doll, which was purchased alongside 2 others by Debbie and Cameron Merrick, and which was also featured on the This Morning show. You see, one day Debbie and Cameron made the decision to purchase 3 old Victorian dolls for the low price of just $5 and their sanity. Shortly after they purchased the dolls and moved them into their home, strange things started to happen. The fire alarm would go off constantly and continuously, despite no smoke or fire being present in the home, and Cameron began waking up with tiny scratches all over his legs. One day, one of the doll's necklaces disappeared, and Debbie and Cameron came to the conclusion that this doll must be possessed. After speaking about their experiences online, the pair, along with their possessed Victorian doll, were invited to the morning show. The couple spoke about their experiences since purchasing the doll when all of a sudden the rocking chair next to them where the doll was sitting began to move on live TV. After the incident, the pair were positive that the thing was possessed, and so they sold it to a paranormal investigator by the name of Lee Steer, who claims that shortly after purchasing the doll, the lights in his home began acting up, his paintings began swinging on their hooks, and strange scratches were appearing on his arm. He also claimed that at one point the doll possessed a random word app that shows the user words at random to tell Steer that her name was Samantha and that she hated men. Probably not the best thing to be keeping in a bachelor pad.
This story comes to us from Reddit user ApprehensiveCost806, who asked the fine people of Reddit to help them with a doll they believed might have been haunted. So they wrote, "I like to go charity shopping a lot. You can find amazing things there for even better prices. In my most recent shop, I found a really cute doll. I saw it and I knew I wanted it. It was so cute. For context, I've always been 50-50 when it comes to the supernatural, but since I've got this doll, I've noticed whistling from behind me whenever the doll has been in the same room. I play it off as someone outside whistling, but something else has happened. I was showering and usually leave the door slightly open if I'm home alone, as my dogs always find some way to misbehave. This way I can keep a better eye on them. My dogs started barking uncontrollably, and I thought it was someone outside. I couldn't stop them from barking. I ended my shower to check the door. When I got out, I noticed my dog nervously barking at my bedroom door, where the doll is. I decided to go to my room and check it out. Usually my dogs willingly run into my room and get comfy on my bed or chew what they can find. They wouldn't. They both stood there barking. I'm well aware that animals are deemed to be more sensitive towards the supernatural, and I'm aware of my dog's behavior enough to know that this was unusual.
Next up, we've got Ruby, who currently travels with the Traveling Museum of Paranormal and Occult, but once lived with a young woman who long ago got very sick. The young woman loved Ruby, she was her most favorite possession, and so when the young woman died, Ruby was passed down through generations of the woman's family. Many family members who kept Ruby would put her in a box because they found the doll to be just a tad bit creepy. Those who decided to brave the Ruby storm and keep the doll out on a shelf or chair reported having often heard strange noises coming from the room in which the doll was being kept. Many have also said that they have heard Ruby walking around and also experienced nausea and headaches while in the doll's presence. Those who visit the doll at the museum today are drawn to Ruby, and almost half of the people who walk past her are compelled to take her in their arms and rock her back and forth as though they are trying to soothe her. When they are made aware of their actions, they're shocked, appearing as though they have no recollection of how the doll had gotten into their arms in the first place. Other visitors have gone home with photos of the doll on their phone, even though they swear they have no memory of taking any.
Alright, next up we have Violet the Haunted Doll, who was purchased by Reddit user Abandoned Explorer 21, who stumbled on the doll at a yard sale. The doll was offered for free with a note claiming it was haunted. The user asked the owner why she believed the doll was haunted. The owner said that she had bought the doll at a thrift store for her daughter, who named it Violet. Strange things began happening almost immediately though. The owner heard her daughter arguing with someone she claimed was Violet. One day while her daughter was out, the owner heard a girl's voice coming from the daughter's room. She found Violet in the center of the room and moved her to the bed. As she walked away though, she saw the fridge magnets had been arranged to spell hi. Then a music box in the living room started to play before she heard the door to her daughter's room slam on its own. So terrified, she waited outside until her husband returned, and when they re-entered the house, they saw Violet on the coffee table. The husband tossed Violet into the shed, where she stayed until the yard sale. So the Redditor decided to take Violet home. After all that, for almost a month, nothing unusual happened, but then one night the user felt someone sit down on the foot of the bed, but nobody was there. A few days later, while making a sandwich, the user heard a girl's voice whisper, "Hey." This was followed by giggling from the bedroom, where Violet had mysteriously moved to the bed. Now wanting to investigate, the Redditor bought an EMF detector and spirit box. The EMF detector showed high readings near Violet. After 2 weeks of static on the spirit box, the user finally heard hi and get the thing. Went back to the seller, asked him if there was anything that had been attached to the doll. The seller said maybe it was referencing the music box, and gave it to them. During a spirit box session, a girl's laugh and a man's voice saying devil ended up coming through. So now fearing, the whole devil thing, she ended up throwing Violet into the backyard, and the next day found that she had moved closer to the house. So finally the user put her in a storage unit, never taking her out again after that.
And finally, we have Letta. In 1972, a man named Kerry Walton was visiting his hometown in Australia for his grandfather's funeral and decided to check something off his bucket list. There was an old abandoned building in the town that for years he was too afraid to even go near, but on this visit, he felt compelled to finally face his fears and enter the home. While searching around the home, he found an old marionette doll underneath the porch, and he felt the urge to take it home with him. Feeling a strange energy coming from the doll, Walton decided to bring it to a psychic, where he learned of its origin. It had been made 200 years prior to Walton finding the doll by a Romanian woman for her son who had drowned. Oh, and it also housed his soul. The hair on the marionette's head was real, it was that of the boy's, and underneath its removable scalp was the likeness of a human brain. After the visit to the psychic, Walton began hearing noises coming from the doll that he could faintly make out to be the screams of a young man saying, "Let me out." He named the doll Letta and brought it to his antique shop, but the doll was not for sale. Walton liked Letta a lot because he believed that the marionette was bringing him good fortune, but the doll was not without its quirks. Whenever Letta was taken outside, it would rain, and when Letta was brought into a room, pictures would fall off the walls. Dogs would also get aggressive while in the presence of the doll and try to attack those around them, and many people also reported feelings of inexplicable fear and sadness whenever they got close to it. Walton has also said that the doll will often change positions when left alone and emit a pulse when held, as though it is somehow still alive.
Alright, you guys have any haunted dolls? Send them to us, send them their way, and yeah.
Send us the actual dolls. We don't need to hear the story, we'll find out for ourselves. We'll put them all in James's room.
Thank you.
Yeah.
With all that said, I've been your host, James.
I've been your host, Anna.
Catch you next time.
See ya.